Hi, my name is Dr. Vishal Lala. Welcome to the annual Predictive Analytics competition. Over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to give you a tour of what this competition is all about and how to get started. So this competition is unlike many others you may have participated in the sense that in this competition, your focus is going to be on generating good predictions. You're competing to generate the best predictions. The winner is the person who generates the best predictions at the end of a 4-week-long period. As you make submissions to the competition, your results will get scored and your position appear on Leaderboard in real time. You can submit many times. In fact, you can submit up to 3 times every day, and you may submit each day of this competition. As you progress through the competition, you get to see your positions and your position of the others you may know in the competition. They all appear on Leaderboard. Here's an example of what Leaderboard looks like. Leaderboard will showcase the names of all the participants. Of course, you may not use your real name. You may use a display name that is different from your own name to protect your own identity or privacy. The scores of each member are shown displayed on the right. You'll also notice in the next column called entries is indicated how many times the person has submitted a prediction to Leaderboard. Now, the more entries doesn't necessarily mean better performance. Obviously, you want to make sure that the submissions you make are good entries. But the bottom line here is you can submit many times. And at the end of the competition, you want to try and be towards the top of that Leaderboard list. Okay. This competition is hosted on Kaggle, an online platform you may have heard of that runs many data science competitions. In fact, it's the go-to place for any data science competition. With about 1 million registered users and about 60,000 active users, people compete on Kaggle because they enjoy the sport of it. They also enjoy bragging rights, the chance to brag about their position, how well they're doing in prediction. Mostly this is done on listservs and discussion forums. But it may also happen in person if you know the other competitors in the competition. People do this to get a job with a competition sponsor, showcase their skills to recruiters, and in some cases, there's also prize money involved. Now, the competition we're going to be engaging in here is a bit different in that it is limited to Pace University folks. Could include students, faculty, staff, anybody from Pace is welcome to participate in this competition. By competing, you're going to earn bragging rights, of course. You'll be able to talk up how well you're doing on the competition. You'll also gain valuable hands-on experience with building models. When you're all said and done, you may, of course, share Leaderboard results and in this way showcase your skills to recruiters. Tell them how well you did in making predictions. So a bit about the competition now. The competition is going to involve making predictions about Airbnb rentals. People interested in renting an apartment or home share information about themselves and their property on a website called Airbnb. Those who end up renting the property share their experiences through reviews. The dataset for this competition includes information about the property, such as the number of bedrooms, the square footage, information about the host, such as how many properties they have, and reviews by guests who have stayed at that property. We have information about over 40,000 Airbnb rentals in New York. Altogether, we have about 90 variables of data. Now, this data is not supplied by Airbnb. It was scraped from Airbnb's website. So we don't either implicitly or explicitly guarantee the data is exactly what is found on Airbnb's website. Furthermore, the data is used solely for the purpose of the Kaggle project you're looking at here. It is not recommended for any use outside of this competition. The goal of this competition is to construct a model using the data set supplied and to use it to make a prediction about the price of an Airbnb rental in a separate data set called a scoring data set. The submissions will be evaluated based on a metric that calculates how much error you have in prediction. The index we're going to use here is called root mean squared error. The lower the root mean squared error, the lower the error in your prediction and better the model. You, of course, would then aim to construct a model that is as low in RMSE as possible. Now, let me show you how you can get started with the competition, a bit more about that. To register and get started, you'll have to go in here, fill out a form, and follow the directions to get started. Now, it's critically important. This is the only way, in fact, to get started with the competition. So let me click on this link and see where it takes us. So I click on the link. We're sent over to a form. This form looks as follows. This is the registration form to sign up for the Kaggle competition. Now, here's where you'll enter your information, such as your name. I'll enter my name in. And ensure you enter your PACE email address only. If you're participating in this competition as part of a course assignment, then you would also want to share information about the course you're doing this for. So if I was taking a class by Dr. Lal, I'll mention his name. Of course, I don't want to mention his title, just his name is sufficient. And if the course is predictive analytics, I'll enter that information as well. And if I know the course code, which I should, I'll enter the course code name. Assuming the course meets on a Monday at 5:40 p.m., I'll indicate that as well. So this is, of course, assuming I'm engaging this competition as part of a course requirement as well. If you're doing this purely because you want to get experience, valuable experience, and of course bragging rights, you wouldn't fill out the bottom half of this page, and then hit next. Now on this page is information about how you can get started with the competition. It is important not to close this window until you're done entering information at the bottom of this page. So first steps first, click on the link called visit kaggle.com to register an account. If you already have an account, you can go to step 2. I'm going to assume you don't have an account. If you don't have an account, you'll open a fresh web page or click on that link, which will take you to the website for Kaggle.com. Here's the website for Kaggle.com. And once you're on here, you'll register for an account. Registration is very simple. You find the register option, click on register with your email, not with Google, with your own email, because you want to make sure you enter your PACE email address out here. So I'm going to enter my PACE email address out here, enter a password, and enter in my name that I want displayed. I'm going to put my name in here as follows. And then check the box, I'm not a robot, and then hit next. This will get you signed up. Obviously, it says here I already have an account, so I'm not going to create one here. But if you don't have an account, you want to do that first. Your second step is, once you've done all that, hit the submit button. You'll get an email from Kaggle with a code. You'll, again, check your email out, find that code, and then authenticate your account or verify your account. Once your account is set up, now is the chance you have to sign up for the Kaggle competition. You can do this by going to step 2, where it says click on this link. I'll click on the link to open the Kaggle competition registration page. I'm going to do this in a separate window. I'm not going to navigate away from this window, open that in a separate window. So here I am in a separate window. And now you can see information about the Kaggle competition out here. Once you're in here, in my case, as soon as I clicked on that link, I landed up right here on this page. It's the competition page, and I'm already into it. In your case, you're probably going to see an option called Join Competition. So when you click on that link, click on the Join Competition button, and then you would have joined the competition. Now, after you've joined the competition, you need to return to this window to enter in your Kaggle username and Kaggle display name. Generally speaking, your username and display name are the same, but you can elect to have them different. Now, whatever you decide to have as your username and display name, make sure you keep that for the duration of the competition so we can track the authenticity of the submission. We don't want folks who are not part of the competition to be joining it. So plug in your username, whatever username you decide to put in here. And this could be, again, you think of something cool that would be that you found that created on Kaggle, and plug in that username and display name out here. When you're done with this process, let's say my username happens to be awesome modeler. And let's say my display name is the same as this. I would just hit next to this point. And that concludes my registration process. At this point, I'm ready to participate in the competition. I have registered. You cannot join the competition unless you've registered and gone through those steps there. Now, once you've got you registered for the competition, I'm going to go on to the second part and walk you through how you can set up your first submission. There are many ways of participating in the competition, many ways of doing modeling. I'm going to show you the R method. Specifically, I'm going to make use of a software called R to pull the data and construct a model and push the model out, push the predictions out to Kaggle. So we're going to follow these steps here: downloading the data, read the data, construct the model, read and scoring data, construct submission, and finally to upload to Kaggle. So first things first, let me go back to the Kaggle page. So here's the Kaggle competition page. It tells you a little bit about the competition, much of what I've already shared with you. And under data, you'll find data sets for the competition. There are 3 data sets: analysis data, sample submission, scoring data.csv. I'm going to click on download all these files to my computer. You're going to have to find out where in your computer these files have been downloaded. Once you locate the place where the files have been downloaded, you will access that folder. In my computer, they've been downloaded to the downloads folder, which looks like this. It's called predictlala 2021.zip. Now, I'm going to unzip these files. Oops. I'm going to unzip those files, and then I'll share my unzipped folder with you. The files are unzipped in this folder called Downloads predictlala 2021. And it's really, really important that you make note of the folder where these files have been unzipped to or been saved. In here are 3 files: analysis data, sample submission, and scoring data. Now, analysis data is the data you're going to build your model on. The scoring data is what you're going to apply your model to. Sample submission is merely an example of a sample file that you want to generate as your prediction file that you will upload to Kaggle. We're going to generate the submission file. So I'm going to go and delete the sample submission file at this point. It's gone. We're going to create that file. So notice the timestamps. We're going to create that file called sample submission, which we can then push to Kaggle. Now, in order to do all this modeling work, we're going to make use of R. So here's my window for R. I use a GUI called RStudio. In here, I'll go to scripting window and get set up. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to set my working directory. Set my working directory as being the folder where those files are stored. The setwd function will get this done. I checked the folder, and it is, my folder is users, Bilala, downloads. Hopefully I got that correct. When I do that, my working directory is set up now. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring the files into R. Now, how you do all these things is also shared on the Kaggle page. So let's go back to Overview. Under Overview, I've shared information about how we go about the process. Specifically, we want to be able to bring the data in, analyze it, construct a model, and apply the predictions and scoring data set. Our final data set, our final submission file, should have the following format, looking like 2 columns of ID and price. And so here I have some sample code you can use to construct your submission file. this is a sort of like a quick start file. I'm going to copy this code and put that into my R session. Now, the first comment out here says, for the following code to work, ensure analysis data and scoring data are in your working directory. It already is. So I'll delete this line. Next, the instruction says, read data and construct a simple model. This line of code here, read.csv analysis data.csv, will ingest that file. Notice this will only work because I have set the working directory as being the place where analysis data is saved. At this point, analysis data has been ingested. It's in my computer here. So I'm going to make this window a little smaller so you can see better. Okay. So now I'm going to go in the console and I'll type in here just to make sure that the data has been ingested. You can see here if I do head data, it'll show me some information about the data set. So it's a lot of variables, so it's really not possible to see everything on your screen. So let's just look at the structure of the data set real quickly here. Again, that might look like a lot of information, so a lot of variables in there. Let's just look at the dimensions of our data set. So we have here 41,328 rows of data or observations and 91 variables. So you have 90 variables to use to predict the price of a rental. These 90 variables describe characteristics of the property, the host, and reviews from guests for each rental property for which we have a price. So our first step is going to be using a model. On line number 5 is a model that employs minimum nights and review scores accuracy, two of the variables in the model in the data set, to predict the price of an Airbnb rental. I run this line of code. Now we have a model that contains, in a sense, the results of this linear regression model. Examining this model, which gives us standard linear regression type output, tells us something about the statistical significance of the variables, and shows us an R-squared measured and so on. Now, what we want to do here is really use this model to apply, we want to apply this model to another data set, specifically a data set called scoringdata.csv. For us to do that, we need to ingest this data set called scoringdata.csv. Line number 8 is going to ingest that data set in. So let me run this line of code, and that data set is in. Before we proceed any further, I'm going to do the following. I'm going to look at the dimensions of scoring data so that we understand that this data is a little different in structure than the analysis data. The scoring data has about 10,000 rows and 90 variables. You'll recall that analysis data in the data frame data had 91 variables. So there's one less variable in the scoring data set. I'm sure you've already guessed that the missing variable is the price variable. That's the one variable we don't have in here in this scoring data set. So our job here is to predict what the price variable will be using all the remaining 90 variables in the scoring data set. To do that, we will run line number 9. Line number 9 takes our model, called model, and applies that to the new data set called scoring data set. So running line number 9 is going to give us a bunch of predictions. Let me inspect the predictions. The predictions look as follows. Let's look at the first 10 predictions. The first 10 predictions look as follows. They include the predicted price for an Airbnb rental. Great, so we have our predictions for a couple of rentals in the data set called scoring data. Now, Kaggle wants the data to be in a certain format, that it wants the submission to be in a certain format. It wants in the submission file that there be 2 columns, one for ID and one for the predictions. In order to do that, we've got to create a data frame that has those that exact architecture. So we can do that very quickly out here, or very easily out here, by, for example, creating these 2 variables. So let's do this for our data. I can take scoring data $ID and create a column for that, and one for predictions, which is in the column in the vector pred. We'll look at the first 10 rows of this data set. So this simple bit of code should have worked. It didn't work. Let's see why it didn't work. And let me just see. Okay, so there we have it. I was missing a comma. So now we get to see the first 10 rows of our submission file. The submission file has the correct format. You've got the ID and the predictions. However, Kaggle is very picky about the format. It wants the column on the left to be called ID. So we're going to rename this to be ID. And the one on the right has got to be called, price. So let's call that price. So modifying this data frame function will enable us to get a structure that looks like this. Now at this point, the data set in R looks exactly like the way it should when put together. Now, in order to submit this to Kaggle, we've got to take this result and convert it into a CSV file. The code that will enable this or make this possible is, first we construct the submission file using the function I just shared with you, but for the entire data set. And then write.csv will take that submission file and convert that into a file called sample submission.csv. You could decide to use a different name here instead of sample submission. Let's say submission 1, submission 2, as you go through the process. You should turn row.names to be false so that R doesn't create row names because that's not the format that Kaggle wants the data to be in. So if I run this bit of code now, I've created a file called sample submission.csv. The modeling process, estimation process, and prediction process has been completed at this stage. Let's take a look at what our file looks like. Our file is in this folder. You'll notice here this process you can tell it took 9 minutes because we downloaded the data set and then we wrote the predictions to sample submission.csv. The timestamps tell you that what we just created is the new file called sample submission.csv. We're not quite done. At this stage, we have got our submission file on our computer. We need to make sure this file is on Kaggle so we can be scored for it. So I'm going to go to Kaggle at this stage. Let's verify our submission file looks right. You can see the format looks exactly the way we want it to be. Now your file is a CSV file. That is, it's a comma separated values file. So it's going to resemble what you see on screen in terms of format. To submit, I'm going to click on Submit Predictions. And then here, it's going to give me the option of submitting the file. All I've got to do is drag and drop the file on here. Let me do that. I'm going to go to my window that has the submission file, and then drag and drop that file on here. There you go. The upload takes a few seconds. And then here you can type in some information about the submission, like first submission. And then hit Make Submission. When you hit Make Submission, your submission is going to be pushed to Kaggle. Kaggle will score your prediction based on your predicted prices you provided, summarize that in terms of an index called the root mean squared error, and that number is what will show up under Leaderboard against your name. Alrighty, so that is how you go about with your submissions one after the other. Okay, here's the code I just shared with you, and some things about the timeline. We start today on March 22nd, 2021, and you've got 4 weeks. So on April 18th at 11 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time, the competition will conclude. So all that's left to say at this stage is good luck and happy predicting.